Voila, there we are, appearing before a throng. Hey, everybody, we're going to give it a couple of minutes, maybe 90 seconds, 2 minutes before we dive into stuff as we typically do on one of these Tar Heel 24/7 live streams. I'm excited to do a live stream from home. I did one 6 nights ago from my hotel at Jacksonville Beach, Florida. That was good. A lot of fun. Did that with Jacob. It was a fascinating night, David, because literally 97 seconds in, the world thought that Samo had committed to Carolina, and I'm sitting there I'm texting with you and trying to text other people while it's going on to see what's going on. And of course, here we are 6 nights later, and he has not yet committed. As we said then, we would vet and wouldn't report him as a commitment until he actually is a commitment, and we have confirmation for that. But there is a lot going on. We ran a Hubert Davis podcast. Jacob and I did something last week. I guess it was last week that we ran about Hubert, sort of asking the question and answering it. Can he come back next year? Will he be welcome back? Would it be good if he comes back and all that? It was honestly, it turned out to be a feel-good podcast because I think the answers are yes, 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 and yes, except I don't know if he will. And somebody said on Twitter last night, running out of topics, guys. And I said, oh, yeah, not really. By the way, there's a live stream tomorrow because we've got a ton to talk about. And I don't think people understand how much you have been grinding. I'm at the beach. I felt guilty, and you're bouncing around. You're in Atlanta one weekend. You're in Memphis the next weekend, and you're getting all this information. You're watching all these targets that Michael Malone and his staff are offering and watching up close at the EYBL stuff. So we're going to get into that for some of you who are just joining us now. Our topics tonight. David, in the last few weeks, has seen 5 Carolina targets with offers, big-time players, all in the top 12 of the class of 2027. They have Carolina offers. David has seen them play. David has spoken with them, so we'll get into each one of those guys at some point during the show. We're going to talk about Matt Abel. The Matt Abel story is one that until he gets off the pot is going to be a story. And I think there are Carolina fans that are getting a little bit more concerned. They saw Jeremy Woo's rankings that came out, and Matt Abel is right near the top of the second round. So that's got some people concerned. He has until a week from today, May 27th at 11:59 p.m. to either pull his name from the draft or stay in the draft. So at least we know in a week and 5 hours, 4.5 hours, we'll know what's going on with Matt Abel. We're also going to talk a little bit about your observations of Michael Malone and his staff, seeing them at the EYBL, having opportunities to be close to them at the EYBL, and just sort of your perception of them, how others are perceiving them.
And spoke with them.
And spoke with them 100%. And just the perception of others have of Michael Malone, just the way he's being received on the coaching circuit. Basketball coaches are a fraternity, but it's sometimes maybe different when a guy comes in from the pro ranks and he's suddenly wearing that brand and he's being embraced the way Michael Malone was. And we're going to do a little Samo talk here as well. And also take your questions. We're going to be here for a little bit. We haven't done one of these in a couple of weeks, so we certainly want to get you guys involved. And don't forget, TarHeel247.com. We're running a special all throughout the month of May, 50% off a 1-year subscription, $1 to try us for just 30 days. But 30 days is good. You can hop in, get a bunch of David's intel for 30 days, and decide whether or not you want to stick around for a year. Of course you will, because you love Carolina basketball, you love recruiting, you love intel, you love the community. You will learn to love the community that we have, which is massive, the largest Carolina fan base that there is, community that there is out there. All right, David, we're over 200, so this thing will grow fast here in the next few minutes. Let's go ahead and get into this. I agree, by the way, David Sisk is a rock star. Okay, first of all, before we get into any specific topics, you have been literally grinding since as that 19-point lead was melting down, that's my reference point. That's when I knew all hell was going to break loose, because I knew that night what was coming. What have the last couple of months been like for you covering this, all aspects of the process, from Hubert being fired, the replacement, the portal, the recruiting? You've kind of put your both feet and both hands into every conceivable basket that there is.
Well, it's really been a grind. It's always a grind if you're in this business. I mean, you know that better than anybody. but it has levels, and the toxic level, the 5 alarm chili fire has been since really since the season started in November. So it goes for 7 months, maybe 8 months. It's almost like the dry season, rainy season in Africa. So it's what I call it. We're in the rainy season. We're in a monsoon. So
you took a canoe to Memphis and back, right?
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of that, it's not rained over here in I think the first day it's rained in a month. But anyway, I would dare say, I shouldn't say I want to dare say, but I may have been the only beat writer at both. And what I mean by that, someone that specifically covers a team at both Atlanta and Memphis. There were a few at Memphis. I can't remember many in Atlanta. If there were, they certainly weren't at Memphis. So I think I might have been the only one. So, and I appreciate Tar Heel 247 and 247 Sports for giving me the leeway and the ability to do that. So yeah, it's, and I told somebody, the springtime of the year back in the good old days was fun. The season, the season's over. You can get into AAU and high school recruiting. The weather's getting warm, those kind of things, man. It was just the perfect time of the year. And that was before the transfer portal and international. And now, I'll give you an example. I went to Memphis I remember in Memphis a couple of years ago. I may have shared this on the last podcast, but used to, if a player had any dealings with an agent at all, he was automatically ineligible. And a couple of years ago, they've got seats reserved for agents, like 2 or 3 years ago. And now now it's NBA scouts and it's agents. And, last week was kind of a throwback just a little bit. I've been talking to a couple of AAU coaches, specifically with Vegas Elite, since there's been that's the latest 2 offers. And it kind of took me back to the good old days for just a little bit, that there's we're actually dealing with, as many people think, the scum of the earth AAU coaches now. And that to me, it's kind of refreshing.
It's incredible how it's changed. Boy, I wonder what Myron Piggy thinks.
Oh, man.
Remember that all over $3,600 and whatnot. Times have.
I used to call Myron Piggy all the time when he was with the Kansas City 76ers. And he'd answer the phone. He'd go, "You can run, but you can't hide." And that's why he'd answer the phone. So
when Corey Maggette was with the Bobcats, I asked him a question about Myron Piggy. I said, I got to ask a question. He was cool about it, but that was interesting. I said, "You ever pay him back?" He said, "Nah." Didn't really want to go there. That was kind of fun times. For those,
he had Jerron Rush, and Mike Miller, and just they were loaded.
Yeah, man. Corey Maggette. For those of you who don't remember, Corey Maggette was like one of the first Duke players to leave early, way back in the day, at the end of the 90s. All right, David, let's go ahead and jump into the topics here. We're going to talk about those recruits as well. And there's a lot of really good stuff that you got, a lot of great stuff you got in Memphis. I mean, honestly, we could probably do a 3-hour show just based on what you did in Memphis. We're going to start with Matt Abel. A lot of people want to know about Matt Abel. Let's go ahead and get him sort of out of the way, in the sense that you have a piece today on our site where you spoke with, I can't even remember exactly how many, around a dozen. 8?
Yeah. I reached out to about
scouts.
12 and heard back from 8. Yeah.
NBA scouts, what their thoughts are. They've seen him up close here lately. They are very well versed on everything about him right now and where things stand. And you got to take it away. You asked their opinion about Matt Abel, first round, second round, stay, go. Take us through that. Let everybody kind of get some of the intel that you were able to collect.
I talked a lot to them about beforehand. So what they felt before the combine. And then after the combine, after he played the 2 exhibition games and he went through all the measurements and workouts and all that, if they felt like he'd played his way in, because really the consensus was he was going to have a really good week. to have a chance to play his way into the first round. Well, he had a really good week. And so I had, like you said, I had 8 answer back. And they were really they all liked him. But your opinions were kind of across the board. I think maybe one thought he may have. There was one that was absolutely not. And then the other ones were just kind of depending where he was at in the second round. And to me, it's kind of like when I see the mock drafts by very good ones, by very good, respected individuals who are most noted for their mock drafts, I see him anywhere from about 32 or 33 to about 39. That seems to be like the busiest window for him. And to me, I think the scouts were kind of in agreement. So I think what you're seeing from a lot of these mock drafts, and you got to remember, these guys that do this, they have their own set of eyes, but they're talking NBA people too. And I'll give you an example. Henry Vasar. When I went to Atlanta, we're asking, is there a chance he could come back? Could he be first round? And there was an NBA scout told me specifically, he said, we've got him at number 27 on our board. And it's a team that's in the playoffs, still in the playoffs. So he said, we've got him at number 27. So these guys, they've got board, they've got ideas, and they share. So I think a lot of times what you see in some of these mock drafts by the really respected ones, they're speaking with scouts and they're getting some of the information that we get.
Matt has climbed up. Climbed up quite a bit. And I think in trying to get a gauge what some people are saying out there, and I don't have the NBA context you have, at least the scouting context that you have. So I just kind of read reports and little snapshot interviews of some people who know a thing or two. And one of the things that's impressing a lot of people is that he's been consistently good. Like there's no bad days. And there's no days for people say, oh man, well, we can't waste it on this because if we get that 30% of the time, he's going to be in the G League. I mean, he's having good days, the kind of good days that if a team takes a fly on him, they probably think he's going to be on the roster. And that's an interesting part of the equation here, obviously, because that's what he wants. I think it's pretty clear he would love to stay in the draft and play in the NBA. That's what he wants to do. He wants to play in the NBA. He also has an amazing safety net that is North Carolina. I think he really would embrace the idea of coming back if that's what he has to do, and he would approach it the right way. He's somebody that could play himself into a top 15 pick or even higher next year. So there'd be a whole lot for him to gain by coming back. But he's squeezing every drop of juice out of this opportunity, and he's making it work for him, David.
I'm going to say of the individuals that I've spoken, and you got to remember, I probably, like I said, I've heard back on this specifically question from 8 or 9, but I've probably spoken about him in the last couple of weeks to about 15. And I'm going to say 90% of those, I think that's probably a fair number, say that he needs to come back. Just about every, I understand what you say. He needs to come back. Because I feel, number one, they feel like he needs one more year of college. And maybe number two, like you say, could help his draft stock. That could be an issue. One thing that's falling into that we have to watch, and it was the same, I think, with some of the information that Henry got. And that was who comes back to college and who stays in the draft. And Henry had gotten word, I think, that there was going to be probably quite a few guys right in front of him who were going to come back to college.
Yeah.
And he could move his way up. That's 5 or 6 spots he can move up. That may be something to watch here. You know, who decides. I think they got to the 27th. That's a week. Today is as we do this right now, it's the 20th. Yeah. So we're talking, 144 hours in a week. We're talking about the next 148 hours and 8 minutes as we do this right now that he's got to make the decision. And I think he could wait right down to the very end than just to see what some of these other individuals do. Let me throw this in. I think one reason or 2 reasons that he was consistent. I think his fundamentals are good.
Yeah.
Not perfect, but I do think he has good fundamentals. But I think, too, if you go look at the stats, not only did he score well, but his quantity of shots. So he had a ball in his hands. And at North Carolina State, you watched him, even in the big games, that he played really well against North Carolina. That was one of his better games, but he still didn't have the ball in his hands a lot. He kind of stands in the corner, and then if he gets hot, they might run a play for him. But he stands in the corner.
Which happened that night.
You saw what it was. It's all those, they were ball-dominant guards, and they're just working. So every now and then you get a touch, you better make the best out of it, and that's a lot of pressure. You got to be darn near perfect. Whereas in the portal, he was allowed to play, and he had it, and I think it made a difference.
There's been a lot of clips that have come out of him since the postseason started. Not stuff from NC State, but stuff about workouts and combine, and the tremendous concern that Carolina fans have about adding a perimeter shooter. Might that perimeter shooter actually be him if he comes back, that they've got that guy, that he's a better shooter than he was at NC State?
I think you look at, and I'm speaking about me, when you look at this roster, I think it's grown on us compared to what it was at the first. When you look at what some other people go see, and you get, we get Terrence Brown, and we get Matt Abel, and guys like that. And then I watch Terrence Brown play, and I go, this guy's pretty good.
Yeah.
We've already discussed that here. But then you look at Abel, and you're talking about a guy who, if he stays, and I've heard it too, could possibly be top 15, top 20 in the draft next year if he stays. It could really help himself. So you think about what you've got on that roster that are potential NBA guys. I know we all think Sayon Kita is, but we've all heard that. He's a potential first-round guy. And Matt Abel, I'm sorry, potential first-round guy. I know you're pretty high that F. Dallas could be a potential first-round guy. So there's three potential guys right there on the roster that could be better than what we ever imagined when they first committed to North Carolina.
And Samo's still in the draft, correct?
Yes.
And so he's not part of the equation now, but if he does end up committing, and we'll talk about him later.
And he's not on any – I've not seen him on anybody's boards. He didn't get invited to the combine. But so that's all interesting.
A year at North Carolina, a year with Sean May teaching him how to use his hips, teaching him that footwork, how to go up straight and own the space in the lane. Never know. I mean, I just think that's interesting what he could become, especially he's 21. So 21 to 22, playing ball here, learning under Sean, and having Malone as the head coach. It'd be interesting to see, kind of gauge if he can work himself into anything as well. But I agree with you on that. And there's also, I'm with you. In fact, Jacob and I were I was talking about this with somebody else who's not in the media at all. And we were talking about this roster, and I said, the more I think about it, the more I envision everything kind of playing out the way it's going to play out. I like it. I think there's a lot of guys that are going to be in positions of strength, playing where they need to be. I think we've seen at times the last couple of years, guys playing out of position, playing an area, being asked to do, Seth Trimble being asked to guard a 4 2 years ago, things like that. And it took a lot away from their game. So what we saw wasn't the whole of each of those players, because there was a lot of overcompensating going on. I think that there's a chance when we look ahead, we will see like all the good things from this guy, all the good things from that guy allowed to kind of take place at the same time. And if they are pro players, they are NBA players, we'll find out. And that will be reflected on the draft boards as the season goes on. So you're saying 3 right there. I'd say 3 is pretty damn good, because North Carolina hadn't had 3 at one time in a while, in the same season.
I think Maximo Adams on down the road, I don't know when, but I think Maximo Adams will end up being a guy that you'll be looking at for NBA draft here in a couple of years.
And now I wonder if he could be that guy next year, because remember how much Caleb Wilson grew in the offseason last year.
Yeah.
And turned himself into a top 4 pick. I don't know if he was a top 4 pick when the summer began, but he made the most out of it there. He improved a ton. Maximo, I know he's rated lower, obviously. He's not a top 10 guy, but you love him. And there are a couple dudes that are going to be going in the first 15 picks next month that weren't top 10 guys, weren't top 20 guys coming in this year. The one in particular at Illinois.
Mm-hmm. North Carolina's last two guys that they offered are from the Vegas Elite, and we're going to talk about both of them. That's who Max Adams played with, Vegas Elite. So Brian Sitter is the program director. I talk a lot to him, and and that's one thing I like to do. I like to go back and talk to these coaches at these tournaments that coach guys that were in the program that's at North Carolina now. And I've done that from, ever since I've been here, from guys like R.J. Davis and guys like that on up. And man, he sees the same things that I see. And I told him, here's the thing. I said, not only is he a 3-level scorer, he's used in 3 levels in the strategy. Not just he gets to the rim, they use him to post up. And he starts throwing all this stuff that he could do. And I'm like, check, 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 check. And I said, this is just the things that I've been saying. Not that I'm any genius. If I can pick these things out, anybody can. I think he's a real deal.
Is it fair to say that, for the sake of discussion, Matt Abel comes back, this is a more talented team and maybe a team that has greater overall balance than what we saw this past year?
Yeah. Now, here's the thing. They still need more post depth. I would not be thrilled going in and playing as it stands. This team is not complete yet.
No.
So let me say this.
And that, by the way, that's what makes it intriguing, because I'm asking the question before it's complete. Because I think you can argue 1 through 4 and 1 through 3 for sure.
The backcourt's much
but
better.
It needs that guy. Yeah, but it needs that
backcourt. The backcourt's much better. The front court's not yet. And I don't know that you get that front court was so good last year. My goodness. Yeah. But especially when Caleb was healthy. But the thing is that they need a banger, and they need another. We're going to get off on this when we talk about Samodurov. They need another guy like that in the post, but they need a banger too. They need somebody in there that can throw the weight around. So this team is not complete. And when I talked to the coaches over the weekend, I said, hey, if Samodurov commits, are you done? Because and let me say this to our readers, we appreciate you and everything you guys do. And there are no useless questions that you ask, because you guys ask a lot of good questions. There's questions that have come on here that I've took the opportunity to ask coaches. One of the questions the last time we were on here, if they take Samodurov, are they done? I asked a North Carolina coach, and they said, no, we've got feelers out all over. We've got options, that we're looking at. We got people that we're speaking with. So we're looking to fill it. No, we're not. We're looking to add more players.
And I think that's what's intriguing, because when I think about next year's team, I do think of them adding a Samo and maybe even something else, that they've got to have a post-entry ability to score to make everything work. Otherwise, there's going to be issues. And Jacob and I did something, and we were talking about Samo, and he must come in and learn how to get his rear end down the block, get an entry pass, and score and get something out of it to make the defense honest, force the double to drop down to open up all this other stuff. If they don't have that big, they could be very, very talented, but I think it's going to stagnate at times, because you absolutely need that. And where do those guys come from, David? I see it right now. People are nervous. They're concerned. Where are those guys? They're not on trees. So where are they? Where do they grow? Where are they finding?
Well, number one, I think they need a guy. I shouldn't say number one. They need a beefy guy, but I think they need a guy like Samodurov. They need a guy like him, somebody to stretch at that 4 spot, I think, to free the guards up. But you'll notice, if you'll look this week, now that the combine is over, you're seeing teams add international guys like crazy.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of them out there. Now, granted, a lot of them's been in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, where Will Wade's taking guys that are drafted 3 years ago in the second round and taking 30-year-olds. That may be the case, but there are international guys out there. And so, I think there's guys that they can add that we may not. I don't know who all these. I mean, I'm trying to learn the European game just like the rest of it. I guarantee you, there's more. There's more out there than the 3 or 4 that we've heard of. I mean, all you've got to do is watch FIBA ball and watch international ball and think. Look at the NBA right now. I mean, the internationals are just killing it. So there's players all over.
Yeah. I have a feeling that this roster build is going to go on well into past Memorial Day for sure. That's only next week, actually, isn't it? Yeah, it's next week. Yeah, so it's going to go into June, and we'll see. But Carolina's gotten players before. I think Michigan got Yaxel in early June last year. Carolina
I think got June 13th, something like that.
Yeah, Carolina got Pete Nance in late June. We were at a football camp, like a Mac Brown football camp, when Pete Nance committed, and he wasn't European, and so it's just fascinating that the timelines from 5 years ago have no recognition, no resemblance of what the timelines are now. The timelines now are really never ending with this stuff. Let's move on to the next topic. I thought,
man, I'll tell you what, we could have a podcast just on Will Wade. And you talked about a top man. I'm just reading the comments here. We mentioned Will Wade and it blew up.
Did you see the tweet?
That's why I'm saying he would have been, and people are going to get mad at me. You talk about a guy who can just stir it up. I mean, he would have been a wrestling all-time heel, and I mean, he would have needed security to get in and out. But he would have been good for the ACC because, man, you talk about a guy who would have kept the interest going.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much Wendell Murphy could have put up with him over there in Raleigh, but
I know.
I do think that in a weird way he's good for basketball because he makes everybody else look better. Number one, number two, Tom Izzo is a wonderful dude. Tom Izzo, I would love to cover Tom Izzo, and he's even spouting off about him. I saw a tweet today that literally had me laughing out loud. My wife's like, "Hey, what's that? What's that?" And it was a Shaq O'Neal committed to LSU. And you know how when these guys are bouncing around different schools now, they'll have the school logo, and arrow pointing to the school. They had all of this NBA. They had LSU and a bunch of NBA teams, and then the arrow back to LSU. So I figured Chris Jackson and Nikita Wilson are going to as well. They're all going back.
I don't know if you saw Maurice Spates put out a tweet today. He said, after 18 years of professional basketball, I'm coming back to college, and I'm announcing. I think he announced for Florida again after 18 years in playing professionally.
Well, let's stay on this. Organic is good. It's good, but it's also bad. And is there any way to fix it?
Say that
okay, this is good because it's chatter. College basketball is a topic in May. Hadn't been the case before, really. It's a big topic in May. So anytime you're in the news, anytime you're being talked about, your sport is being discussed and generating interest. And I imagine it's generating interest in Baton Rouge from that football faithful. But it's also bad because it's just gross. You have to kind of plug your nose when you think about it sometimes. So where do you kind of sit with some of this stuff? And do you think it can be fixed outside of Congress? Does the NCAA have the ability to lay down legislation that won't be challenged in court till the cows come home, and therefore nothing ever be done and nothing ever change?
Yeah, it's going to have to be. And because there's nobody else who can fix it. I mean, who else can? When I got to Memphis Friday, they're having Memphis in May at the same place. They have it right beside the Liberty Bowl. And so I parked my car. It's about 11 o'clock in the morning, Friday morning. And there was a very, very, very well-known coach, one of the most well-known coaches in the country, parked the car right beside me. So we started talking going in. First question I asked, I said, let me ask you something. Do you think these numbers that they're throwing out for NIL is real? Or do you think they're just made up? Some people think they're made up. And he says, no, they're real. He said, you better believe they're real. He said, I'm going to tell you something else too. I thought it was interesting. I really not thought about it. He said, the last thing, if you're a college coach, the last thing you want people to know is that you've got NIL money. Because I was thinking if I had NIL money, man, I'd be letting everybody know. And these recruits, I mean, hey, man, I got it to spend. But he said, no, you can't do that because, man, if they know you've got a dime, they're going to renegotiate. You never can get them nailed down. They're going to commit, and then they're going to say next day, no, I'm coming back for more. If they know you've got it, they're going to bleed every last dime they can bleed out of it. So I thought that was very interesting. So that just tells you there that even the commitments and the paperwork and all that stuff, none of it's legit. Contracts are not legit. None of that stuff's legit. I mean, it's just there are no parameters. It is absolutely the Wild West. And so only the government can fit. You know, I had a real good
and they passed on it the other day.
Yeah. I had a real good friend of mine who was years ago was an attorney. And he said, look, you can stop this stuff if you said, look, if you cheat, you're basically breaking racketeering laws.
Yeah.
Across, especially out-of-state kids, across state lines. If you cheat, if you do that stuff, you're going to prison. So yeah,
it should be in the same under the same umbrella that point shaving and stuff like that is. Why not?
Yeah.
Make it harsh. But then someone has to police it. Who the hell's going to police it?
Yeah, they don't have anybody. That's why the NCAA can't do it.
Yeah, 100%. All right, Michael Malone and his staff. I always enjoyed the Roy Williams photos back in the day when he was at EYBL's AEU events, and Roy's a schmoozer. Roy loves the fraternity, loves being in the fraternity. Roy will sit there and chat with the guy who's head coach at North Texas just as much as he will the head coach at Cincinnati. And I always appreciated that about Roy. He was one of the dudes. One of the things that struck me based on your reporting, based on photos, based on some clips I saw is Michael Malone walked in wearing Carolina blue, and he's one of the dudes. Hubert didn't approach things that way. And this is not a criticism. Some people took some information that you posted on our board a couple of days ago as criticism of Hubert. It's not. It is one guy does it this way, the other guy does it that way. It doesn't mean one is better than the other. It's just an observation of differences. Hubert wasn't that guy. Hubert wasn't the backslapper. And I noticed with him as a coach, he would never stop and have long chats with the other coach before a game or post game. It was very quick, and he was into his own world. And that's kind of the way he rolled. And that's the way he was with us. That's the way he was behind the scenes. I've seen it firsthand many, 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 many times. So your observation about Malone and the staff as being different and what you like, not saying that you dislike the other way, but what you like about how you saw how they went about their business.
Number one, and I'm not going to say that there's a difference here, but Malone is very personable. Malone chats it up. You could tell he's a lot of laughing, a lot of shaking hands, hugging, sharing stuff, laughing with other coaches, with individuals there in Memphis at that tournament, with people in EYBL, with people that were working there. I could see him being a good recruiter because he seems to be very, very personable. The previous staff, and like you said, I don't want this to sound as a knock, but we have to compare and contrast because I saw it every year. They stayed together. They were off to themselves a lot. They would all, if there were three of them, they would all go watch the same person, the same player. They didn't split up. And Hubert was comfortable not being front and center. So I was in Memphis last year, and there was a national, this was on a Saturday, and it was well into the event. And there was a national writer asked me, is North Carolina here? And what happens when you go to these tournaments, they have seats on chairs on the baseline. You've got 8 courts running, 2 rows of 4, side by side, by side, by side, by side, by side, by side, by side. So 2 rows of 4. You've got seats in the middle. And that's where the coaches sit. Nobody else is allowed in there. And so you can tell where the coach is at. When you saw all the pictures, and they're easy to find because you know where they're going to be. We know who the coaches are watching. So I had a national guy ask me, is North Carolina even here? And I said, yes. I said, they're up on top on the ledge up there. You go up the steps, and it's very high, and there's railing. I said, they're kind of off in the corner. And he got to look at you. I mean, you really had to look. So you found Malone right there on the baseline. Got there early for Vegas Elite Sunday to see those players, and they were sitting right under the basket. And then they would split up. I think I thought that Sean May had more autonomy than he'd had before. So you would end up having a coach at one court watching one guy, because at the end, Paul Osarui, the 2 guys for Vegas Elite, and Marcus Spears, and C.J. Rosser and King Gibson were all playing at the same time, the 12 o'clock game Sunday. So they were split up after they started out all 3 at Vegas Elite, and then once they got through about the first quarter, they split up. So there was one at every floor. And the other thing too, Chuck Martin, and I've said this, Chuck Martin is, man, he just seems to be the guy that everybody likes. And like I said, he could have been elected mayor down there. And I mean, everybody's just glad to see him. And he seems just like a kind of a laid back kind of guy, and knows everybody and is big into relationships. And he's been doing this a long time too. You got to remember, it's not like he's a newcomer. So I think me seeing them for the first time, I thought with what they did, it was impressive. I thought, because like I said, I think they handled everything well, just as far as showing themselves to the public and to the players. The players knew they were there. That's the important thing. And I really liked the way they went about it.
And Chuck Martin got a little stir going with his wardrobe and his shirt in particular. Take us through that.
Everybody loved his shirt on Sunday. And I asked him, I said, man, your shirt's the Twitter age. And he said, I don't know where I got it. He said, they gave it to me. I wore it. I don't know. I said, what's the brand? He said, I don't know. And it turns out the Jordan brand made it. The logos are a bunch of Jumpman. There's Jumpman. So he said the Jumpman brand sent them to the golf team, and he got that. He ended up getting one. So yeah, they're cool shirts.
Very cool shirts, and he wore it well. I thought it was interesting looking at North Carolina coaches who are, especially the 2 of them, whom we hadn't paid attention to before, in Carolina gear at an EYBL event. I thought it was refreshing in some ways. I thought it was truly fascinating. It seems like, in some respects, that Michael Malone's been the head coach for like 6 months. And yet I feel like I just got home from his introductory press conference. I'm still adapting to this. And it was pretty real seeing them there, seeing the 2 of them courtside watching games in EYBL, because that to me is really the heart and soul of what this is all about. And they're doing it, and they're doing it in the Carolina gear. And it's like, yeah, there really has been a change. There's a new sheriff in town, and this guy is really immersing himself in all the things that he needs to be a college coach as opposed to an NBA coach. And how much did you find yourself just watching them and trying to get a gauge on how they were viewing things? I know you saw that they were well received and everything else, but did you kind of find yourself just looking over there and saying, yeah, that's the North Carolina coach now? This is a little getting used to, but every time I glance over there, I'm a little more used to it.
No, not really, because I've been watching these guys for years. So, from him.
I'm
So
I'm speaking specifically just to being so different from North Carolina. That's more like it for me. That's
I think maybe at first. I think maybe at first, but I'm going to tell you what. When you're at these AAU events, when you're there a couple hours, man, you're in a trance
yeah.
by the time, and man, by Sunday, by 3 days of it, I mean, you could you could have a nuclear war and you wouldn't know it. So it's. I mean, you're totally in a fog.
Yeah, I can completely identify with that for sure. I can identify with it. I thought it was pretty interesting, and I thought what you reported on our board, and you went more into it on the board as well, was very interesting. Some people took it as a criticism of Hubert, but it's not, because Hubert got his guys too. Hubert got Caleb Wilson, and he got Ian Jackson, he got Drake Powell. It's not like Hubert wasn't getting guys. It was just his way of going about it, which was certainly different. We're going to talk about Samo for a couple of minutes. I'm going to talk about some of these recruits that you had a chance to watch up close and talk with. We did a little bit of Samo. What are your thoughts about him as a player? And if he were to commit at some point very, very soon, how does he slot in, and how does he make this team better?
I think he will. And I put this on the board, so I think I can say it publicly. I asked twice about him, different coaches, and one said, until we know, we haven't been told anything. We haven't gotten anything official until he makes it official. He's not committed. And then another was like, we're working on it, man. We're working on it. And that was exactly how he said it. So I do think he will. It's just, you got to be patient with this. It's going to take a little bit of time, but I like him. Like I said, I just think he'll add some scoring in that post spot. I think he's going to be able to stretch a little bit. I don't think it adds to what they need as far as the physical presence inside. But I do think it's something they need, because if you look at what they've got right now, we don't know that they've got a big who can stretch out, who can step out and stretch. I think they've got to have a big. They've got to have a 4. We know how important it was that Henry could do it last year. I think they've got to have that guy who can step out and shoot the ball. I think because I just think you've got the guards, especially Brown, that are going to put the ball on the floor and get to the rim. And I think they need some. And the way Malone runs his offense, if they run all this Zoom stuff like I think they're going to do, everybody's just going to switch and stay under everything. Yeah. So when wing goes and screens for the corner to come and get the handoff, they're going to stay under everything. So you've got to have some guys who can shoot the ball and stretch it. And then when they have to go over the top of these things, that's when you start getting slips and the 45 cuts. I mean, you try to run it in high school, and high school teams will just, like I said, they just go under everything, and it's hard to do. But when you've got threats from outside, and once teams have to start jumping the routes for handoffs and going over, that's when you make it work, because you've got all that space in the lane.
What I like about Samo, and I find very interesting, is that when he was 14, he was playing in the 16 under, and when he was 16, he was playing in the 18 under. He wasn't playing in the 16. He was always playing up, playing older guys. And he's done that a lot, and I think some of that has shown in some of the numbers that he's posted at times. But last summer, he was 20, and he played in the 20 under, and he did really, really well. What do you gauge from what he did a year ago? And is it a little bit misleading for people to read too much into what his Greek league numbers are? Or how do you kind of work around that? Or how would you suggest people work around that?
I think it's kind of a wild card. Do we see what they do in college, because it's different? And I think a lot of these guys that play, especially in Europe, these European leagues, when they get into the athleticism of the college games, it takes a while to adapt. And we spoke about it last year with
Luka.
With Luka, that it was important for him to be there all summer, and it still took a while to adapt to that. So, and remember, I can remember sitting here a year ago with you and talking about how big a deal it was going to be for him to be there for the summer and be involved in these legendary summer scrimmages at Chapel Hill. So I think that stuff's kind of huge. I think the big thing for somebody like that is the physicality and the athleticism of the college game and adapting to it.
And embracing its reality. And I've told this before, and for those who've heard it a few times, I apologize for being redundant. But Armando Bacot spoke very, very Armando-ish, but also eloquently about the importance of Tyler Hansbrough knocking teeth out of his mouth and sending him to the hospital in the middle of June, his first summer there. And it was a wake-up call. This is the way things are. It still took Armando a year to fully get there, but that was like, okay, here's the way things are going to be. Now, there aren't many Hansbroughs out there, but this is the summer of 2019. So Tyler was just winding down his career, I guess his NBA career at about that point. There are guys that will be there this summer playing with Samo if he arrives. He's going to have some older players that come back. Dion just finished playing. I'm sure Dion can go out there in the court and bow him around a little bit. It'll be very interesting to see if they get him, how soon he arrives and how quickly he's able to get out there and just get thrown around and learn to adapt quickly. That, to me, would be the most beneficial thing about him showing up sooner rather than later.
Man, if they told me to be there June the 1st, I'd be there February the 30th. Yeah. So, you've got to guys like that need reps. And I'm going to be honest with you. He needs reps more than Abel will need them, more than Brown will need them. And, those guys are acclimated to that. So they need to he needs to be there. Question was, did they sign him? No. But we're just saying if he does. And I think most people feel like it's just a matter of time that he's probably going to be a Tar Heel. So we're kind of looking at it from if they do get him, which we think is probably going to happen, he needs to get on campus.
And to clarify from what we talked about at the outset of this a little bit, it was a week ago tomorrow night, 6 nights ago, when Jacob and I were doing a live stream and I was down in Florida at the beach, where all hell broke loose. People saying that he committed and we're doing our diligence. I know that there's other media that covers North Carolina that does equal due diligence, and none of us reported it because it hadn't happened. As you found out this past weekend from the staff's mouth that he had not committed. So that's why it's really important to vet and get confirmation. You just can't run with stuff. So when it does happen, we will report it.
I'll give you an example. Last night, Aiden Diggs, or yesterday evening, Aiden Diggs put on his Instagram that he had gotten an offer from North Carolina. So I texted him. He was the last person I spoke to in Memphis. So I texted him. We didn't say anything until he answered me back this morning. I said, "Did you get an offer from North Carolina?" "Yes, I did." So, and I'm hoping to speak to him tonight, actually. So, you just got, sometimes it takes time.
Yeah, sometimes it takes time. Let's go ahead and get into some of these players. I'm excited about this because we haven't done this in a while. And one of my favorite things about the summer when you and I do podcasts is you get a chance to see these guys, and I implicitly trust your vision and what you see. And just for some of you who don't know, David, longtime AAU coach, college coach, high school coach. He's coached a ton of guys that played in the ACC and SEC and some that played in the NBA, still in contact. You saw one of your former players, Corey Brewer, this past weekend in Memphis. And
I saw more. Terrence Oglesby was was doing EYBL color announcing with
That's right.
So Terrence is one of my guys. So, yeah.
I watched one of their broadcasts in Beckham Black. I was watching some Beckham Black, and Oglesby is a very big fan of his. We're going to talk about 5 players in the class of 2027, all with Carolina offers, all of whom that you saw here, have seen recently and spoken to, and they're all in the top 12 in the class. I'm going to go in order of the rankings to make.
And I'm going to mention all of them at one time or another, by the way. So I want to throw this in right quick. And we spoke about beforehand, Malone has re-offered everybody that had an offer with the previous coaching staff. And then there's been 3 new offers since then. So that's kind of where it stands right now.
Well, let's do this then. Before we go into some of the individual players, you and I had a discussion before we went live about this, that my impression is that Malone's going hard after the biggest dogs are the biggest dogs. And you're like, well, wait a second, he's just offering the same guys that Hubert offered. And it's interesting that there's that impression. And I told you, I said, maybe it's just the newness of it. Maybe it's that the passivity with which Hubert went about things, as opposed to the newness and sort of seemingly aggressiveness of Michael Malone makes it seem like he's doing that more. But you said, hey, it's not that much different.
No, I don't think so, because like I said, he's offered re-offered everybody that Hubert did. Hubert had offered everybody that he had. I think there was like one guy that was out of the top 12, top 15. And I know you looked some in the past, we've seen them offer some guys, and they've signed some guys that might have been top 50-ish, top 100 maybe early on. But I think he really started tightening the net up a little bit. And the big tent was getting smaller, if you can put it that way. So I see that here. I talked to a guy that covers another team right before we got on here, and he had asked me. I was asking about a player or two with him, and he said, "How many have they offered?" And I said, "Well, they've re-offered everybody, and they've sent new offers out to 3." And he goes, "Is that all?" And he was talking about another school that probably offered 10 guys since Friday, and I understand that happens. So Hubert was kind of selective. Malone's being selective. I think here's the thing now. I think the portal's so much more in play now than it was 3 or 4 years ago, that you can kind of pick and choose and go about it that route and then go get guys in the portal. So it's not like you've got to go get 7 or 8 guys and say, we're going to get this guy. He's ranked number 123, and you can't always go by rankings, but he's a 3-star, and we think we can make something out of him, because now those guys are not around long enough to do that. So and there's so many good players available in the portal, and now you're going Europe and all these other options, and guys that were drafted in 2016 wanting to come back and play college ball. So you've got all those options. And I think it's changed a lot.
Well, Michael Malone's been looking at guys for the last 25 years who were older versions of these top 12 kids that they've offered. And that he saw this past weekend. I wonder at what point, when he looks at a number 40 kid and he's like, I want that kid. He's going to have to go through that process of recognizing that number 40 isn't dog meat, that dude can play.
But you've got to remember, too, you can sign a kid in the NBA. These contracts, most of them are 4 years. Out of, so you can get them and you can send them down to the G League, and you can have all that, and you can work and develop. And I mean, there's no, like I said, there's no parameters in college basketball right now. So, I mean, there's no promise that they'll be there 4 months, let alone 4 years.
Do you like the early approach from him? And is this what you expected, or is it just so early, too early to tell?
Yeah, it's early, but I'm going to tell you the thing that I've noticed. So if you ask me, what's the big thing that you've taken away? The guys that they focused on and they really liked, they offered quickly. Mm-hmm. So I'll give you an example.
Roy didn't do that.
Jan Kamagati on Adidas circuit. So they went to Adidas Friday night, in Indiana. So it was Chuck Martin, it was Malone, it was Pat Sullivan. So they watched Nasir Anderson, they watched some other games, but they watched Compton Magic. And they offer Kamagati that night. So they come in Saturday, and man, there were some guys I felt like that they were really focusing on. That you had all these guys here, but I think there were a couple, and in particular, 2 from Vegas Elite. So he's watching Demarcus Henry and Aiden Dix. And I told Brian Sitter, who runs Vegas Elite, I said, they've not offered yet, have they? And he said, no. And I said, don't be surprised if North Carolina I think they'd offer Henry first because he's 27. At that time, Aiden Diggs was 2028. Aiden Diggs reclassed up to 27 Monday. Yeah. I said, don't be surprised if he don't offer Marcus or don't offer DeMarcus Henry tonight because he's watched every dribble for 2 games. So sure enough, he offers. So I walk in the gym. And the first guy I see is Brian Sitter. Brian Sitter said, man, you hit that nail on the head. And I said, I'm just kind of putting 2 and 2 together with him. So the last guy I talked to, because they played the 12 o'clock game, that was the last 1700 game. There were 8 games going on at one time. So Malone's there watching them predominantly. So I asked Aiden Diggs after the game, I said, has North Carolina offered you? And he said, not yet. And I said, give me your phone number. I'm going to call you because they will. You're going to get the offer. I can promise you. They've watched it too much. So they offer. And I was not trying to be a mouthpiece for them, but I'm starting to put that together that there are guys here. They've offered a lot of them, but there are guys specifically that he's focusing on and moving on. And that's one of the first things that jumped out to me.
Well, and I think that speaks back to what I said a few minutes ago. There's an aggressiveness there. They zero in. Roy would watch a guy and watch a guy and watch a guy and watch a guy, and then he'd eventually offer. And when he offered, it was like gold. That's things are different now. Malone doesn't. That's maybe not his style. He doesn't really do that. He doesn't have the.
He doesn't have the luxury to do that either. I mean, he's got he's got to move while the iron's hot. So he gets right in. And, just gets them right off the bat. He had an offer right off the bat. He doesn't have 2-3 years to recruit. Roy would recruit the janitor, the preacher, the pastor's wife, the mailman, just everybody around him. In fact, when they had to do Zoom calls, when COVID came in, he would not do a Zoom call with a recruit until the whole family was there. Grandpa, grandma, aunts, uncles, cousins, everybody had to be there. And he spoke to everybody specifically. He was great at that.
I heard a story about him talking to a lunch lady in the cafeteria of Players High School to make sure that he was courteous when he got his lunch.
Yeah.
That's Roy. Let's go on and let's talk about some of these other guys, David. Okay. There's some impressive players. I've watched some film on all 5 of these guys. The first one, Marcus Spears, he's the number 1 player in the class, 6'9", number 1 overall. He's Plano, Texas. His dad is Marcus Spears. A lot of people know him. He's played for the Cowboys. He's a TV analyst, dynamic prep in Dallas. I'm going to give you a quick take on him. I'll wait to give you a take on him. Just tell me what your thoughts are. Carolina.
No, I'm going to hear it. You go ahead. I want to hear your take.
Okay, because this is an old school take. I'm going way back, but he's the last player I watched some stuff on today. And I swear to you, he reminded me of Purvis Ellison. Body language, the movement, even the hair a little bit like there was a lot of Purvis Ellison. Didn't seem like a super demonstrative guy. Can use both hands, just very fluid, just playing the game and highly productive. He really jumped out was Purvis Ellison.
He knows if he doesn't, mom and dad will come down out of those stands and put belt to butt. And I'm not making that up. He's been raised right, but mom and dad were both tremendous athletes. His sister was the top volleyball player in the country, plays at Texas now. That is a family of athletes, and he's been well schooled in that. So they just go, it's play to play. And one thing that he's doing, the ball's in his hands a lot more. Because Ryan Hampton was on his team last year, and really both guys were kind of on ball, although he plays inside more. So Hampton, when he's got it, Marcus didn't get as many touches. The thing I think about Marcus, he's got everybody running at him. This is not an outstanding team, but they've got a great record. And it's because of him. And so every game that they have goes down to the wire. Drive Nation's the name of the team. So if you watch them play or anything, you get in the fourth quarter, the score's going to be 60-59 with 3 minutes left. And that's the way their games go. So, excuse me, he made several big plays. Hit a game-winning shot in a game that I watched. They ran a beautiful design for him on the side out with about 4 or 5 seconds left, and he scored. They cleared it out, and everybody went with the cutters, and they just threw it over the top to him. So he's a guy to me that's has a little bit of a clutch gene. So you've got a lot of discussion right now. Who's the better player? Who's going to be the number 1 ranked player, him or C.J. Rosser? Let me tell you a little bit what they're looking for. I had this discussion over the weekend. How they rank players. This is my opinion. They're not ranking players of I don't even think who's the best right now, who's going to be the best in college. I think that they're looking around later on when guys are in their mid-20s and saying, okay, when they get into the professional ranks, who's going to be the best player? I think that that's what they're looking at. So they like these guys in this 6'9", 6'10" range who can play on a perimeter, who can handle the ball, who can make shots. So you see that. If you see a guy right now does the same stuff, 169, 163, the 6'9" guy is going to be ranked higher, always. So Rosser, 6'10", Spears, 6'9", 6'10". So, yeah, he's absolutely legitimate.
It's interesting you say that, because the projection thing, because he looks like a guy that's just a long way away, and he's already so good. Like, there's just so much that he's just so much there. There's just so much. I don't even look. He's one of the guys. I don't even look at him right now. And a lot of these guys, you say, man, there's so much potential. I'm like you. When I watch him play, I don't think about potential. A lot of these guys are like that now. And you look at their stats, they shoot 35%, and they can't make shots yet. They're trying to develop the game. I just think, I'll say this, I think as far at the same point. Now, remember, same point as far as being able to put the ball in the basket and be the go-to guy. I mean, he's ahead of Caleb Wilson, in my opinion, at the same. Now, that don't mean he will. I'm talking right now. Caleb Wilson, we would look at him and say, man, there's so much potential there. And that's what they're saying in a draft. What can he be? But right now, Marcus Spears is just, I mean, he goes and gets it right now. He just looks a lot more economical at this stage than Caleb. And Caleb's going to work through a lot of that stuff. We saw him do a little bit this year, but what did you think of Ellison? Do you see any of that? It's just the body.
I didn't think about it. I can see that same size, but
some of the stuff that he did from the blocks where he didn't have to get to the rim, but he could still score. That to me is what jumped out.
Yeah, I'll give you. I just remember Never Nervous Purvis, and Never Nervous Purvis made big shots. So they got that in common.
Played for the Washington Bullets. Used to go get tickets for $7 to watch that crew play. At least 60 games a year. All right, let's go ahead and go. So what now?
You got ripped off.
Oh God! Well, hey, we did go to Yergi Murasan a couple of times just to watch him stumble up and down the floor. All right, Beckham Black. Beckham Black, 6'3", number 3 overall, number 1 point guard. They got a lot of guys who are number 1 at their position, though, the 5 that we're going to talk to. He's originally from the Dallas area, plays at Southeastern Prep in Orlando, Carolina, Kentucky, Arkansas, Southern Cal, Georgetown, Duke, some of the schools. I watched, you mentioned Oglesby and Adam Finkelstein. I watched one of the games they called of his, and what I really, really, really like about him is he's 17 years old and he's already under control. And he's got some shake and bake and stuff, but he's under control. Doesn't look like a guy who's going to force too much. He's got an interesting looking shot that might get a little work between now and when he gets to college. But I could see he looks longer in the AAU stuff than 6'3", too. I don't know if he's grown or what the deal is, but there's plenty to like there. I can see why he's the number 1 point guard.
He can score or he can facilitate. And I felt like when he played with Southeastern Prep, he looked for his shot too much because he had C.J. Rosser, Abeno Akizi. He had all those guys on the team. They didn't get a lot of touches, and I felt like sometimes he looked to score too much. He facilitates. I think he facilitates a little bit more this spring. That's right. He's legit. Now, I'm going to say this. This is the first player you've heard me say it about in the Michael Malone era. I think they have really circled the wagons around Beckham Black. I'm talking about the North Carolina coaches. I think that they have really focused on him. I talked about how they were focusing on the Vegas Elite, the two Vegas Elite players, Aiden and Demarcus Henry, before they offered. He's already got that offer. They watched him intently. Malone was all over him watching him this weekend. They kept coming back. He played 4 games, 1 Friday, 2 Saturday, 1 Sunday. I think he's a guy that they – and look, there's a lot of good ones. Nasir Anderson, let me mention him too, because he's the other point guard. They've re-offered him, plays for Adidas. I wasn't at Adidas. I was at Nike. But they really, really have a lot of focus on Beckham Black. Now, let me tell you, he can choose wherever he wants to go. It's like a draft for him. He's been offered by everybody. He's from Texas. He plays the Southeastern Elite in Florida, but he's got a lot of those Texas schools on him. Texas Tech. He's Arkansas with Calipari. Duke's offered. He's got a lot of those. But it looks to me like early on, like this is a guy where Michael Malone has looked at him and said, hey, I want this guy.
How athletic is he?
Very. Now, he's not the guy to go break the rim down, but that's not what we're looking for at a point guard. Quick, can get to his spots, can go by guys, elite ball handler, can make shots from all 3 levels, can pass it and all. But yeah, very, yeah.
I mean,
if you're a point guard and you're ranked that high and you've got the teams that have offered and looking at you, I mean, you're going to be as quick as anybody out there handling the ball. And he can get wherever he wants to go when he wants to get there.
I asked that because if you strictly watch the AAU film here recently and then watch his high school film, it looks like a different player. And it's going to be different when you're playing regular high school ball. Even the competition that they play some pretty good competition, but AAU is different when you have a lot of other guys that are like you out there. And I asked the question because he was certainly more of an under control guy, more of a facilitator in AAU than in high school. And I wondered, I didn't see a ton of explosive athleticism. I'm not saying he doesn't have it. I just didn't see it, which is why, and I only watched 1 game. So I'm curious, you having seen him play a lot, where that is and when does he use it? Is he a guy that can get from the top on a shot clock situation and get to the rim? Is he that guy?
Yeah. He gets to the rim pretty much when he wants to, because I remember I went last January in Memphis and watched them play Bartlett. Southeastern Prep, and the gym's packed, and a lot of people haven't seen him before. Those Memphis people, man, they know athletes and know ball, and just heard people saying that, and they weren't necessarily there to see Beckham Black. They wanted to see Bartlett win. They wanted to see C.J. Rosser and Kesey tear the goal down. And I remember them just like, man, Beckham Black's the real deal, because I think he ended up having 30-something points, and he shot it a lot. But, man, he just gets wherever he wants to go with his dribble. It's just going to be hard to keep him in front. He's quick enough. He can handle it. He's got it on the strings. Footwork, change of pace, change of direction, knows how to use the ball screen. He's got all that.
He's got a little spin move too, David. He's got a nice little spin move. He's got some moxie in his game. He's got some of that stuff I like to see. I like to see a point guard who kind of sprouts some of those things. Last thing about him before we move on to the next player, jump shot looks like a half mini jump, mini set shot. What did you see recently from him on that? And what do you think that anybody needs to do anything with it, or you just let it go?
A lot of these guys shoot because they're open like that. So they're not going to, they don't take the full jump. I don't mind it too bad because it's under control. Yeah. So the thing is, can you get to your spot and pull up and shoot? It's not. You're not asking him to come off screens and be the 2 guard and be like Reggie Miller coming off a screen and firing one with it in your face. I don't think that's as important for a point guard. He's not a combo guard. He's not a 2 guard. He's a true point guard.
Yeah, there were a couple possessions where he wasn't on the ball and he just kind of stood in the corner
Yeah.
didn't really look like.
I don't think there were too many of those. I don't think
there weren't too many. There weren't too many, but I thought it was interesting because I'm already thinking, guys, get him the ball, get that guy involved because he's the best player on the floor and he's going to make the other guys better if you give him the ball and he gets the others involved. All right, you've already spoken a little bit about Aiden Diggs. Let's go a little bit more into him. A lot of people are highly intrigued by him. The reclass is fascinating that he reclasses and he's the number 4 guy in 2027. So obviously this dude could play. He's rated the number 1 combo guard, originally from Gilbert, Arizona, went to, I guess, a public school there, but he's now at Millennium in Goodyear, Arizona. Take us a little bit more behind the Carolina coaches watching him this weekend, getting the offer. And like you said, you're going to try to talk to him tonight, but I think he's an interesting story and my goodness, it's hard to miss him when you turn on the film. That is a dude that can play ball.
Yeah, and him and Demarcus Henry together made as good as 1-2 punch as you've got. So to me, he's a guy who, when I say combo, a lot of times you say a guy's a combo guard because you don't know which one they are. Well, he can't necessarily, he can play point some, but he can't play it all the time. He may be a shooting guard trying to play the point a little bit. I would call him a combo guard because he can excel at either spot, man. He can light you up from the 1. He can light you up from the 2. It doesn't matter. Score it off or get to the rim, and he's a guy that can knock down the shot. His footwork, him and Henry, it's like they go to the same trainer almost. Now, they don't. But their footwork, man, you talk about – I'm watching James Harden Euro steps, and that's what it kind of reminded me of in traffic. Man, the feet that both those guys have are incredible. His footwork is far advanced for a young man his age. It is phenomenal. And then you talk about a guy who can shoot the ball, and then a guy who can get to the rim, who can handle it. So yeah, count me very intrigued, and just no doubt those two together, man. I could watch them play all day.
So I found an article on him from January of 2025, and it was talking about this new freshman sensation at Williams High School. And I'm thinking, wait a second. This 2026, this is 15, 16 months ago, and we're talking about him in 27, the number 4 player. That's pretty wild stuff. That's a guy, obviously, that when you reclass you're that high, there's a tremendous amount of confidence there. There's a guy that knows his game. I would imagine that, yeah, you could see moxie, but he's probably got to have tremendous moxie and confidence. And when he steps on the floor, he's the best player on the floor. And when you have a combo guard that you can do either, that can do what you're talking about, if he's the best player on the floor, there's so many things you can do off of that.
Yeah, and what they do too is they set you up.
Yeah.
So his change of direction and change of speed and all that, he just lets you. He's going to let you go ahead and draw a line in the sand. Say, okay, this is the way I'm going to guard you, and then he's going to react to that. You know, Coach Sitter, we were talking about after the game, and he says so they played Team Durant out of the Baltimore area, Washington D.C. area, rather. And they played Team Takeover, another team out of the Washington, D.C. area. And Coach Sitter said, I love playing these guys from other places because the game's different. And I like to see how they play. So you play those kids out of the East Coast, and, man, they just drop their head and they go one direction and get to the rim. And they're just tough. They just talk. Whereas these two may dance around a little bit more. And they've got that ball on a string, and they're so intelligent with a ball, they set you up and then get where they want to go. So, just a very, very high on-ball basketball IQ. And guys like that, like you said, they make everybody better.
Impact player next year, or in 2 years, I guess, when he gets to college, right? Right away.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think he's – you look at where he's ranked, those are the kind of guys going to lottery. Now, at his
Yeah.
size, I think it's probably down lower, but I think probably somewhere when he's set up to go, I think you're probably looking at a guy that's probably going to go somewhere between about 8 and 15 in the draft when it's his time.
Nothing wrong with that. Real quickly, everybody, we're going to take some questions when we're done talking about some of these guys. We've got two more that we want to hit on that David has spoken to here recently, watched just this past weekend in person, really up to date on some of these players. The next one is Paul Osarui.
Osarui.
Osarui. Oh, okay. Osarui. I heard him pronounce O and then ah, and then I saw an interview he did.
That's the way I'm going to say it.
Then I heard an interview he did with some guy said Oser. He just called him Oser, and you can see him just kind of chuckle a little bit. We got some interesting names out there. I think of the kid that played at Gonzaga a few years ago with a similar last name, but he's Canadian. He's from Toronto. He's a 6'10" kid, number 5 overall in the class, the number 1 center in the class. So another player, number 1 in his position. He plays at Bella Vista Prep in Scottsdale, Arizona. He's a guy that has already been to Chapel Hill, took an unofficial under the previous administration, Carolina, Arkansas, Creighton, Houston, West Virginia, Indiana, Kentucky. Real athletic guy, real finisher. I read some stuff about him. Somebody described him as still a little bit raw, so he may not be super efficient with the ball unless he's cleaning up or rolling. But he's also 2027. He's got plenty of time before he gets to college. Someone once said that about Caleb Wilson about 2 years ago. So what are your thoughts about him?
Right now, I think Kamagade's better. And there's another guy who's a center, Louis Uvo with the Knight Riders, and I don't know. I never did see the staff watching them. I think he's probably the best center in the EYBL in the 17 and under. I've watched Osarui play, I'm going to say probably 5 times. And he did pick a good game for Michael Malone to see him for the first time, because he did not play well at Atlanta at all. He did not play well at all. Couldn't stay out of foul trouble, fouled out. Numbers were not good at all, like 7 or 8 points, 5 rebounds. Had as many fouls as he did points in a lot of these games, and was frustrated. He looked frustrated. He did not look like he wanted to be there. And I'm just going to tell you the truth. So he had a better first game Friday night. So Malone shows up, and Osarui looks like Moses Malone in the first game. And maybe that's all it would take. I think if I was Malone, I'd say, hey, man, you need me in the gym. And he had a great – if you'll go on the EYBL look, you can pull up their stats. He plays for the Arizona Unity. You could pull up his stats, and there is a game there among the 7 games that they've played that's clearly an outlier. It's like 7 points, 7 points, 8 points, 5 points, 27 points, 8 points. I mean, and big rebounding numbers. So he's got the body, man. You put the weight on him, and he's one of the put in a weight. And you put him on weights, man. He's going to be, like I said, the first guy you want off the bus, the first guy you want going through layup line for the whole gym to look at, where you're like, oh man, this is one of those nights. He would be a bruiser. An absolute bruiser and banger. But he's got – I want to see him do it consistently. He's got a long way to go, but he showed flashes in that one game. Now, that, like I said, Malone watched him a lot. So was this a guy that he wanted to watch like some of these others that he was intrigued with and fell in love with right off the bat? Or was he a guy that he wanted to see and say, hey, I need to decide here how I feel? But because take this in mind, I made a mistake earlier. I said they offered 3 guys and the rest were reoffers. They offered 4 guys. They offered Osarui as soon as they got the job. I forgot all about that. So Hubert didn't offer him. That was one of the early offers. So Malone likes him. But like I said, I want to see him get more consistency and play with more enthusiasm and not get down on himself as much. I'll give you an interesting point. When we interview these guys, there's usually a horde of media members that are there. So it's just not me. Sometimes I can get one by myself, but a lot of times there's different people from different companies, and we've all made everybody stand up with a microphone in the face. So we were all going to try there were about 4 or 5 of us trying to get him Friday, and the coach comes by and they said, "Who do you want to talk to?" And we said, "Paul." And he said, "Paul doesn't play good enough to talk to anybody. He don't deserve to talk to anybody." So after the big game Saturday, he said, "Paul played pretty good today. He can talk." So that kind of tells you the difference.
I've been around that some in my life. There's some chatter about a reclass to 26. Anything there?
No, he said he doesn't need. He's got the body, but he needs to improve. And he said during the interview, he was asked that, and he said, "No, I'm staying where I'm at."
And that's the right decision, right?
I think so. He's got to improve.
And just a reminder, guys, we're going to take some questions.
He's got the potential, and it's not a lot of these guys. You look at potential, you say, "Well, they're skinny. He needs to gain 40 pounds." This guy's put together, man.
He is.
I mean, I'd hate to run into him in the back alley, but
thank you.
But he just needs to improve and become more consistent.
Demarcus Henry is an in-state kid originally from Charlotte, 6'7", small forward, number 12 overall, number 3 small forward. Plays at Compass Prep in Chandler. Compass Prep must have like 600 guys on the roster, it seems like. Grew up a big-time UNC fan. He spoke with Malone on the phone here when he got the offer, and it was a thrill. In fact, you did an extensive interview with him just a few days ago. I'm going to read one of his quotes. Got to put the glasses on here to make sure I don't butcher it. But part of what he said was, "I love North Carolina. It is a blessing. I love North Carolina. I love the program. It's a legacy program. It's a blue blood school. I'm just very grateful." Arkansas and Kentucky are also in the mix, among others. When you watch the film, he's got all those winning qualities, man. Looks like he's a guy that's going to play this game for a long time.
Yeah, and he's gotten, and I'm going to pull this up as I'm talking. He's gotten a ton of offers since the North Carolina. Since the weekend, Kentucky's offered, and there's been a bunch of others that I've just since then. Gonzaga offered yesterday. Vanderbilt's offered. I think Kansas offered. Arkansas. There's been a bunch. So because he's that good.
Yeah.
Very impressed. Very impressed. And, we're talking about Aiden Diggs and how good he is. I think Demarcus Henry is a bigger version. So, he looks older and he's bigger, but he can do all that stuff from a guard spot at about 6'7". So I am very, he's bigger, he's stronger. Like I said, he's a year older, and that can make a difference. But, man, it stood out right off the bat. When I really wasn't that familiar with him. So when North Carolina shows up and they're watching him, it didn't take me long. I didn't have to ask around, well, which guy are they looking at? Everything about the eye test. Like I said, the feet, just, man, he reminds his body is going to be a lot like Maximo Adams. So I think there's some of that in him. He's got about the same size, but man, he's a load when he faces up, and he's got a million ways to get there and finish. So yeah, I think he's really good. I think he may be underrated at 12. There's a lot of good players out. There's a lot of good players out there, but I think he's underrated. So we talked about Malone being really focused in on Beckham Black. I think he's really focused in on the 2 Vegas boys too.
Yeah, I think I could envision the opposing locker room at some point. The coaches kind of turn to his assistant, like, how do we guard this guy?
Yeah.
He's just going to create all kinds of problems. Do you think that the Carolina stuff, we hear it all the time, guys grow up loving Carolina and whatnot, but do you think that the way he said it, that the vibe you got after having talked to so many of these kids before, that there is a small layer that's an advantage that Carolina has because of that?
I don't know that they've got an advantage, but it definitely puts them in play. I think it'll make them a top-tier team. Now, let's take a little bit of deep dive into him personally. His dad, his brother, and his sister, all three played Ohio State. His dad played in the NFL, played at Ohio State. His brother is, I think, maybe one of the top, if not the top wide receiver in the country that's going to Ohio State. And his sister plays on the basketball team at Ohio State. There was a guy told me, a national media member said, if Ohio State doesn't get him, they've screwed up royally, except he didn't say screw. So there you have that. But I asked him about that. I said, do these other teams need to back out because you're an Ohio State legacy guy, the whole family? He said, look, I'm different. I'm not going to go to a school because they went there. So he said it's a whole different. He said it's a whole different thing for me. Now here's the other thing too is BYU. Now he's already taken unofficials to both these places, and that's the only ones he's taken. The BYU is Mormon. So, and he mentioned that. I didn't ask him. I had no clue till he said it. So he said BYU was kind of special to him because, of that. So that's going to be.
We've got this too.
Yeah. But I think the North Carolina thing too, I think it puts them in there. I think it puts them in the argument.
All right, we're going to take some questions here in a second. Somebody asked, Melinda Dolphin is always on here. She's such a great Carolina fan. We don't know right now. Hopefully we can get Michael Malone. Some coaches do summer pressers, some don't. He may not have time to because he's in constant acclimation mode. But I do know that in recent years, basketball stuff has been moved up a lot earlier. We started getting players at the end of August, beginning of September in recent years. So we may not get anything this summer, but I would imagine we'll hear from him certainly by October would be my guess. It would be nice to sort of pick his brain about some stuff, but he's going a million miles a minute right now. I'm going to check some questions on our boards. Go ahead and pop some questions in here if you guys have some for David.
I want to say this too because we're going to get asked this too. But as far as the other players, we haven't mentioned King Gibson and CJ Rosser. They've been reoffered because I know you said you wanted to go at about 5, and we could speak about all these guys. But those are guys right there. They've been reoffered. They watched them over the weekend. So you can look at those two as well and say, yeah, it is they've not cooled off on them at all. Also, Jordan Page. He's been reoffered. So all the guys that we've spoken about before that have gotten there, North Carolina, Malone they've just picked it up and they're still all in play.
All right. I'm just checking to see some questions on our premium board.
There's been a question. Board. There's been a couple of questions. If Matt Abel doesn't return, will he where will they go? In what direction will they go if he doesn't? Now, I think he will. Okay. I'm not saying it. I'm not saying that, hey, it's going to do so, if something happens, but I'm about the same way I was. I'm about 65-35, somewhere in that range, that he will.
That he will
come back.
Okay.
Because
I actually lowered it. By the way, I'm interrupting. I'm doing
Go ahead.
Typical interruption. But I was asked that by Carolina Freddie called me actually to find out ask about Abel. I was coming back from the grocery store. And by the way, Doug Joyner, if you're watching, I met Doug Joyner at Wegmans in Wake Forest today. He's a huge David Sisk fan. So appreciate meeting you. Hopefully, if you're on here, go ahead and post a note down there. But one of my friends called and asked about Abel, and I told him before I was thinking 75-25, but I then moved it to 70-30 about 5 days ago, and today I told him 65-35. So go ahead.
Yeah, so and we haven't even spoken. I didn't even know you did that. So I think I was 70-30 last time, and I'm giving it a little bit less, but I'm still about 2-1. All the scouts say that he needs to go. I think it's going to come down to first round. I would be very, very surprised if he is second round and he goes. Now, could happen.
Well, you said scouts say, to clarify for people, you said scouts say need to go. You meant scouts say he needs to stay. Stay in Carolina. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Just to clarify, because someone may not heard what you said.
They say he needs to go back to North Carolina. When I say go back.
Yeah.
He needs to go back to North Carolina, and I think he needs to go back to North Carolina. Now,
all right.
Where do they go? I'm sure they're not going to get caught with their pants down. They're going to have guys that they are going to have on their list. I guarantee you they've got it. I asked one of the coaches, like I said, and he spoke about the bigs, what happens if Samodurov committed. And they said, we're still recruiting a lot of guys. I think they were saying that for the guards too, just in case. But guys, there are going to be some really good guards go back into the portal, I think, out of the draft. And I think he would be all in. So if he didn't, let's say if he goes to the pros, I think I'm going to be intrigued by who and I know there's international guards out there too. I think there could be some guys come back in out of the draft that they could really take some long looks at. We'll see what happens if it's a moot point, if he's in North Carolina next year. But for now, I think he will.
And I'm not going to throw numbers out there. I don't want to do that, but I think it's fair to say that because of how they've gone about some things financially, that if somebody did make themselves available and Abel did stay in the draft, that they would have the means to satisfy whoever would be out there. They'd be able to afford a player.
Because that's going to free up a little bit more. Yeah, I think so.
And I also think that if you're looking at Samo and then maybe somebody else, I don't think that they're worried about being able to afford anybody, whatever they need to do to finish this roster off to their satisfaction. I think they're going to be in good shape with whatever it is they end up doing.
They have not gone out and just shot the moon on people that they brought in and overpaid. I've spoken about that before on here. You don't want to get that reputation, because then everybody you try to get is going to hold you down to that. You're going to have to, if you overpay for one, you're going to have to overpay for everybody. And they also haven't come back with a second and third offer. Well, we're not going to get you. I know we were going to give you $2 million. Now we're going to give you $2.5 million. And that didn't work. Now we're going to give you $3 million. It'll be, I think they've done it well, where they've been frugal. They've been good stewards of what they have. So I think, it's not like they've gone out and just blown everything.
Yeah, even with Henry, they only made one offer. That's correct. They just made him that one offer. It wasn't like they made an offer early, went back and talked and said, well, we're going to give you a little bit more to try to get you to come. It was one offer, and that was it. One offer on the table.
Yeah.
It was a nice offer. It was a nice offer.
And that was like the coach told me. He used, and if I said the name, you would know which coach I'm talking about if I said the player, but they had a coach come back to him and say, here's what I need to stay here. And he said, we're not going to pay you that. You need to go, we're not even going to go in that territory. So you can go on somewhere else. So, you're and I think he was wise to do that. I think some of the players that he got to take the place will be very good.
Somebody on our VIP board asked a question. I posted last night, teased the fact that you and I are doing this live stream, and they asked us about roles of assistant coaches hasn't been fully finalized. I've reached out to a couple of them that I've known to find out exactly. I think we understand what Deion's is going to be, but more specifically, B-Rob, to find out what their roles specifically are going to be. I asked B-Rob what his title is going to be. He has. I've not heard back yet. All that stuff will be sorted out. I'm very interested to see where he's going to go with this last spot because he had Kim English, a guy with Atlantic 10 and Big East head coaching experience, and doesn't have that now. He doesn't really have that guy on the staff who's coached as a head coach in a major conference yet. So that might be a way to go. It just depends on who's available, who fits. And I think that Michael Malone's efforts right now are watching players and doing all that. And he could do looking for a coach. He could do that and look at players, David, but I don't think there's any rush to do that right now. It will happen when it does. I think one thing that we've learned in the last 2 months, last month and a half, it seems like forever, about Michael Malone is that there's, as aggressive as it appears he is in some areas, there's no rush. And that's part of greatness. You could be aggressive, you could be assertive, but also under control. And that goes back to what you just said a few minutes ago about overpaying for guys. A lot of people overpaid because fan bases were screaming their heads off when the portal opened about why aren't they signing guys? Iowa State's got their whole roster. Look at what all the players that Louisville's getting and overpaying for. And you kept saying, guys, this is going to play itself out. It's going to take some time. You got to be frugal. You got to spend wisely. And for every X number of dollars you save here on this guy because you don't shoot your wad too soon on him, and that you save on that guy, you've got more to spend down the road, and there will be spending down the road. And here we are, May 20th, they're down the road, and they still got a couple of spots to fill, and they have the money to fill those spots, and they have the needs, and they know a lot more about what they're looking at and looking for now than they did in the middle of April when everybody wanted them to fill the roster in 20 minutes.
Yeah, and we said it here the last time. They got Keita for far less than what Louisville and some of the others were offering. So they've been able. I think that's big, and if you can do that some, then it frees you up to get our players. Speaking of taking your time, there's a question here: is the only barrier to Samo signing his Greek season? That could be one of the things, but I think too, I don't want to paint myself in a corner by putting this thing in a window, but we've got 11 more days here in May. I think maybe that it falls somewhere within that time frame that he goes here in the next, that he will come with during that time. So like I said, just something. There's always barriers sometimes with these international guys, but I am noticing the international guys that are starting to commit to places. There've been a lot of them this week, especially big guys. And I do think it has to do with starting to get some clarification on the combine. I think that was a big deal. So now
you've said that all along.
Yeah. And I still think, like I said, I still think the end of May, 1st of June will be a busy time when guys start making decisions. A question: have you heard by talking to any recruits or parents how the UNC value proposition is being pitched by the staff and how it's different than what you've heard in the past? If so, Al, what do you think they mean by a value proposition, Andrew? You think they're talking about the value of the brand, or is it the value of the
I'm guessing that it's the brand, it's the platform, it's the head coach who's got some cachet. I would think there's a lot of, because before we go any further on that, I've had conversations with people who know where every dollar is in the athletic department, around the athletic department. And one of the things that has been very important in selling to recruits, especially in basketball, is the amount of money that can be made by being on that stage. Like you could be sake of argument, sake of discussion. Say Beckham Black goes to Iowa, and he's a great player at Iowa. He'll make money there. He'll make a lot of extra NIL money there just because people are going to love him. He's going to sell shirts. He's going to do appearances, whatever the case may be. But if he's that same guy in North Carolina, has a major impact, it's going to be exponentially larger. And RJ Davis and Armando Bacot were the original poster childs of what NIL is supposed to be, and they became millionaires that way. So I think that might be what Bart is a little bit alluding to. Bart, if we're wrong, go ahead and clarify.
He said too, recruiting pitch. He answered the question there. I've not heard anything that's any different yet, because you got to remember, everybody that I've spoken to says that right now that it's still, even if there's an offer, they're in the relationship building stage. That they've not had a chance to speak that much. So that not yet. It's still too early for that. I will say this. Here's the interesting. I think it's a funny side note. I got a buddy of mine that was in Memphis, and he said, "You know something? I'm just going to start asking these guys who's got the best NIL offer." and how much each school's offering. So how much is this school offering? How much is that school offering? Who's got the best NIL? And I said, well, it makes sense. You don't want to get on the bad side in these interviews, because, you want to be able to talk to them down the road. But he said, I said, these guys are basically pros now. They're getting paid. And if you're in the NBA or Major League Baseball or NFL, the media's talking to them about their free agency and all that money and things like that all the time. So he went ahead, and each one he would say, okay, who's offering you? Who's got the best NIL package? And every time it was like, man, I'm not going to go there. I don't want to talk about that. It was either that or I don't know. So it was so I think if you could answer 100 or question 100 players about that, I don't know if you get an answer back that you wanted from one of them.
That would be an interesting conversation to have. I like to tell the stories of the old college stories of these kids, where you learn about them and how they grew up and what kind of wired them certain ways. Now it's just straight up how much cash you're making.
Yeah.
And it is different, because every member of the media that walks in that room, certainly in North Carolina, with what their base was last year for every guy in scholarship, everybody in the media, those guys make at least twice what someone who's been in the media a long time makes, which is fascinating, because it wasn't that way not that long ago. I don't think it's changed the relationships that much at all, if at all. I still view them as college kids 100% when I'm dealing with them. They still have college emotions. They still have college reactions. They still answer questions like college kids do. We still find ourselves trying to find a little bit about them that make for good personal stories. It's just, the problem is you don't have time to develop relationships, if you will, where you can also write about, hey, this guy was like this a few years ago. Now look at him. That's one of the things I appreciated about Seth, was so many of my observations about Seth were not just Seth today, but where Seth was and where Seth is today. And I've always appreciated and enjoyed that about covering the college games. One of the reasons why I chose to go straight college after a while and not do professional sports anymore. Now, if you cover a pro team, you get to know those guys, the bulk of those guys, better than you do the college ones, because they're around longer. So it's really flipped on its head, and it's a fascinating thing. And I was talking with somebody the other day about how they just can't fall in love like they used to, because they're constantly trying to fall in love. And after a while, it's too exhausting. And they used to have a player grow on them, and by the time they were early in their sophomore year, they loved them. By the time they left, it was senior night, they were in tears, like they were related to him or something. And it's very difficult now. In fact, some people mock senior night now when guys who play somewhere 1 year get a jersey right next to a guy who played there for 3 or 4 years gets a jersey. So it's an interesting dynamic, David, that all these things, the money, the time spent in a school, how many fight songs do you know? I know that I talked with somebody who covered NC State, and he said that he wanted so badly. He said, I wish I had the courage to ask Van Allen Lubin if he knew any fight songs. or if he would confuse if he'd start with the Notre Dame fight song and end up at some point singing the state one and morphing into the Vanderbilt one. And it's just sort of a play on how things are so different now. But one thing that's absolute is the fans love the shopping. They love shopping in the spring. They love shopping for players, and diehards absolutely love it, because it's a way you can instantly get better, or if you screw up, you can instantly get worse. And I think fans like the the competition aspect of it, and maybe even the uncertainty excites certain people. Although I think a lot of people would like this thing to be done and over with at this point.
That's two of us. I know two people would like to see it happen, but this
full time.
No, I'm talking.
Raise?
No, I'm talking about you want to see it. You want to see
yeah,
the recruiting, the roster get done.
I agree with this,
but it is what it is. I think from here on out, it's going to go into the summer. I can't unless the NCAA really gets a handle on this. I think it'll go to
David. If 5 and 5, if 5 and 5 happens, and they have a one-time transfer without penalty, I think it slows a lot of this stuff down. To be honest with you, I think it slows. Kids are going to have to make a better decision coming out of high school. A lot of them, I'll just go there now, and I can always leave.
Yeah,
you leave, and then you're stuck because if you transfer a second time, you have to sit out a year. No one's going to pay you to sit out a year. So I hope 5 and 5 happens. I think it'll help bring some stability to the game. I think it's good for the kids. Have some identity. What are they going to announce in 10 years when they announce an NBA starting lineup? From list 5 schools and 4 high schools and 5 colleges and just from the United States, from everywhere. Steve Smith, point guard. I don't know.
That's one thing it kind of gets, and you'll hear people get mad and you'll see it on message boards or I'm in DM threads or something. So let's say it's Sunday night football and you got the Bears playing the Packers or somebody. And so, they'll say Andrew Jones, University of North Carolina. And then, the next guy will come on and they'll say Andrew Jones from Wake Forest, North Carolina. They mention their hometown. They don't mention a college or they mention a high school, and that really, I think I've seen college fans get more upset about that than anything.
Didn't Drake May do that for the conference championship of the Super Bowl? Didn't he mention like Myers Park or whatever it was?
Yeah, I think he did.
I know when Robert Quinn was in the NFL and he was part of that 2010 fiasco scandal, he would never mention Carolina. He would just mention his high school whenever he was on. Really good player, but it was wild is what those guys were doing. What was going on under Butch Davis, people wouldn't even notice now. It's the paper class thing, so to speak. I mean, it's everybody. A lot of these guys don't even know where some of the buildings are because so much of it's done online now. It's so different than it used to be. But going back to what I was saying a minute ago, and I'll add this last part, repeat it one more time, and then we can move on to something else, take a couple more questions, and then we'll close this thing out. But when I'm in the locker room, I don't sense it being different. Guys have nice jewelry, but they had nice jewelry back then. I remember talking to Jason Capel in the locker room at University Hall, U-Hall in Charlottesville, Virginia, after they lost, I believe it was their 16th game in the 2002 season, and they became the losingest team in program history. And I'm asking Jason about it, and I'm kind of kneeling down. He's sitting in front of his locker. He's got a little box of jewelry, and he's picking through it, and he's putting an earring in when I'm asking him. Now, you're on the team that's lost more games than in Carolina history. I'm very much paraphrasing. He's like, gets the other ring, puts it in his ear. Didn't really answer the question too much. And so the bling was there then, and the bling's there now, but the bling might be a little bit nicer now. But I think Jason had some pretty good stuff back then too. But that's the only real difference for me when I'm in a locker room.
In 2010, and I apologize if I repeat stories. I may have said this, I may not. But in 2010, I think it was, Tennessee played Memphis. And it was one of the biggest game ever played in the state. They played at Memphis, and one of them was ranked number 1. The other one was ranked number 2.
Remember that.
And while the game was going on, somebody broke in an apartment that 3 of the Memphis players played in and stole a bunch of stuff out of their apartment. So they reported to the police, and the article ran in the Memphis Commercial Appeal of what all they'd stolen, how many mink coats, how many Rolex watches, how many diamond rings, how many alligator shoes. And I mean, it was like there was over at that time, there was over like 40,000. I think it was over $40,000 was what everything was valued at. And it's been a while, so I know I don't have that down perfectly, but
I remember that. I remember that story. That was fantastic and not at all surprising.
No,
not in the least bit surprising. All right, we'll try a couple more and then we'll get going. If you have something pressing, go ahead and ask. I was at UK versus UNC in Rupp when they were yelling for Mark Pope. That was just a few months ago. Anything else? Boy, Melinda's been quite prolific tonight. Oh, by the way, also,
I've hired her as my agent, by the way.
Oh, no kidding. Melinda, if we have an opening. Ray Melton actually has a question. He asked me last night. I'm asking you. Ray Melton's a big-time Carolina fan. I had the true pleasure of meeting him this past season. A wonderful, wonderful guy. He asked me last night, so if Malone is not at all happy with the effort 3 or 4 minutes into the game, does he pull a hockey line change? Is he that kind of guy? Now, he's having some fun with it, but I thought I would ask you because I wanted to give Ray a little shout out. And I told him what my opinion was, so I'm curious what your take is. Even though we really have nothing to go by, but we can have some fun with it.
We don't really have anything, but, you hear two things. I'm glad you brought it up because I asked Ryan Hampton, I asked his
RJ.
brother, RJ Hampton, this question because he talked about he's a player's coach that likes to build confidence in his players. And I said, yeah, but I've had Jaron Stevenson and Jaden Young and their parents say, man, he just comes across as no nonsense straight shooter. And I said, that's a fine line to walk, so I don't know if he would do it. He sounds to me like a patient guy who really wants to build that, but I don't know that he would do it. Confidence, to me, doesn't have anything to do with effort. So if the effort's not there, yes. Now, if a guy's 1 for 10, I remember the old story when Larry Bird coached Reggie Miller, and Reggie tells it. He said he walks into the locker room at halftime, and he said, Reggie, man, what's the deal? He said, you're 1 for 6. And Reggie says, Coach, I'm just not feeling it tonight. Man, I'm not on. He says, not on? You've only shot 6 times. How do you know you're not on? He said, if you're 1 for 20, then you're not on. So, that was his, for a guy wasn't making shots. That was his comeback. And, I could see evidently Malone being the same way, but I don't think it's going to be a deal. I think effort's non-negotiable.
I look forward to how he feels the game. I look forward to if there's a pattern to first half substitutions and then the second half is it's the game. A lot of college coaches are like that. Dean used to like to get a guy in the first half because he didn't want, if he needed him in the second half, he didn't want that to be his first appearance. There's a lot of different theories and philosophies, and they're all right in some respects, especially for guys that coach that level. I'm really looking forward just to seeing how he coaches. It's going to be hard to not watch him sometimes when the game's going on, just to try to get comfortable with him and to develop I don't want to say a connection. I'm not connected to him, but connected to covering him. You have to develop that connection to covering something to really feel like you can immerse yourself in it to do the job properly. And I'm looking forward to that, but we're going to be doing that with a bunch of new guys on the floor too, which is how college basketball is these days. So he'll have that opportunity at some point where the guys are not maybe in 5th gear and they're maybe in 3rd gear, and to see how he handles that. We know Roy didn't care who they were playing, what the situation was. If that was the case, he's pulling them out. And he was going to make an example of him. He did it against Duke in 2005 or 6. It was 2006 at home, I think it was, or 7. Did it against Duke. Took the starters out early in the second half, put 5 new guys in because Duke came out like a 6-0 pop to start the half. And those other dudes outscored them like 5-2 over 3.5 minutes. The place was going crazy. The starters went back in, and they were on point the rest of the way. So it often worked when Roy did that. We got anything else before we get going, Dave?
Yeah, I see a lot of conversation about Milan from Iowa State on the board. So obviously, I think the thing, would you look that direction if Abel didn't come back? I don't know, but I do know this. If I'm going to be intrigued just to see which direction they look for guys that don't come back. And I'll be honest with you, I do think anything's in play. I really do. So there's nobody that I would not say no to right now. Well, will they look at this guy? They wouldn't look at this guy. I don't think we can necessarily say. So, I mean, if we looked at Jeremy Woo, I'm just looking at the guys here, outside of the first round. What if Amari Allen, he's a power forward at Alabama, he's 32. Tyler Tanner is a guy. Yeah. There's been a lot of talk, and I hear he's one that would go for a way over $3 million. So, and they've already, I think, maybe pretty well set at the point guard spot. But, so you're looking here at Milan at number 38. Now, if hopefully by the time he makes his decision, Samodurov would have made his. So yeah. I don't know that you would be looking necessarily at Samodurov at Milan rather as a two guard or a three. So. Now you could say, hey, okay, we're going to play Terrence Brown more at the two, and we could slide Milan over and let him play small forward. If you're looking at Terrence Brown as a small or if you're looking at Abel as a small forward. Now, one of the things that really caught me off guard, and I've not mentioned this, is that the biggest thing that probably surprised me from the portal was that Abel, they only had him listed about 6'3" 3/4 without shoes on. So they've got him listed below 6'4". So that he looks bigger on the court. Now, as my old coach said, well, how tall are you? Well, I'm 6'4" with shoes on. He said, well, you play in your shoes. You're 6'4". You don't play barefooted. So
that's what Carolina does with its roster.
Yeah. So you look bigger. So maybe he, that's somewhere that they look. But I think, like I said, I think anything is on the table. As far as guys that would say, okay, I'm pulling out and I'm going in the portal. So I think everybody, and I really want to see who does. And then you can, it's different. They've got their mind made up where they're going to go, but I want to see who goes in the portal.
The other thing, too, I'm taking some notes here about Abel that people are really overlooking is I think Abel has a chance to be a sensational defensive player for this team. I love him in the half court. I love him in the full court. He's really active. He's anticipates very well. His dad played college ball. He learned from his dad. He's got a lot of those instincts of a kid that's just been around the game for a long time. And I think he's what you would call a great guesser. He reads things well, and he doesn't end up out of position a whole lot. I think he has a chance of being – I'm not going to call him a lockdown defender. I think there are very few of those guys out there, but a very, very good on-ball and help defender, someone who can get back and transition and defend. And if you're looking at someone like Milan, when I watch his game, and I did see him in person a year ago plus in Milwaukee at the NCAA tournament because they played right before Carolina and Carolina and Ole Miss did. He's a really nice player, but they're very different, and he's not going to defend like I believe Abel would do. So if Abel doesn't come back, you have to replace what you view of him as an offensive player, but you also have to replace what he, I think, would be able to provide for them as a defensive player, and also grit. There's a lot of grit in his game too. I think he checks a whole lot of boxes, and that's one of the reasons why Jeremy Woo has him at 33 right now.
And as he moves on, I think one thing that you don't do, now these are not the guys that you take in the lottery or take in the first 5 picks, but guys, 3-and-D players are in the league a long time. And, and it may not be necessarily where you're Ray Allen or you're a fixture of the program. or organization and the face of it for years, you may be in several spots, but it comes, you're traded or it's time to go free agent. They're always looking for those types. So, there's guys and they've made a living doing that. A 3-and-D, you hear that term all the time in the NBA, and you're going, man, is this guy still playing? He's been in the NBA 10 years. So, the league's full of them.
Big time. And Michael Malone would love to have that kind of guy with the name of Matt Abel on his roster next year. I think I originally said back in the day, meaning like, I don't know, 5 weeks ago, that I wanted Abel over McNeil. And then I started looking at that lineup saying they need an assassin, McNeil over Abel. I'm glad McNeil went back to NC State. NC State needs an assassin. It's good for the ACC, good for the area. People may not want to hear that, but that's the way I look at it. But I do believe Abel's a better all-around player and may have more of a future if he can become a consistent, very good shooter, which I think is in his game. We're about to close this thing up. If there's any last question, you have about 20 seconds to pop it in there. Otherwise, we're going to close up shop tonight. David, I really do appreciate you taking the time out. You have been working your butt off the last couple of months. We appreciate it so much. I agree with all the accolades people are saying in here about you. 100%. You are the best in the business. We are honored and privileged to have you with us. And we will do more of these, but we can't do these all the time for obvious reasons. We don't want to just come on here and blab for no reason. Jacob and I might do that. In fact, we might come on here and just tell stories. You and I need to do one of these when we're relaxed and exhaled, where we just tell stories from our experiences around basketball and all that stuff. And you probably appreciate some of my football experiences too, because there's a lot of damn stories there, man. We have seen a lot of stuff, and some of them would make for a very, very good live stream at some point down the road. Any more? Got any last ones in here?
Let me say this, man. Nobody grinds more than AJ, and man, you're just such a great guy to work for. So everything you said about me, I come back at you double. You'll love this one.
I appreciate that.
Speaking of getting stuff done, Aiden Diggs just texted me, said when you get done with your podcast, call me.
Love it. You're the man, dude. These are blasts. People love these because you're just an absolute rock star. Anyway, we're lathering each other up too much. People are probably throwing up.
Nice. You suck, AJ.
AJ, you suck, man. You suck. You're not a dog. There was a guy that got on us for doing the Hubert pod. A couple of guys, like one guy on our board's like, so we pay for this? Like, we can't do breaking news and deep dives with literally everything. And someone else thought it was not fair to Hubert to ask the question. I just thought it was an interesting conversation. And I was very pleasantly surprised that about 99.7% of the people who have replied and given their take on all different platforms totally embrace the idea. So I hope it does happen sooner.
Let me say this, even if you don't, that's fine, man. It's a free country. You pay your money.
Yeah,
you go right ahead, man. Just feel free. Free country. So whatever you think.
That's right. It's free country, and I have the freedom to cut this thing off at exactly 2 hours and 3 minutes. I'm doing that right now. Thank you so much, David. I'm going to go hang out with my wife. You're going to talk to Aiden Diggs. Probably have that up tonight or tomorrow, depending on.
I don't know. This late, it'll probably be
tomorrow.
I'm going to go home and see how the Spurs, and I've got intrigued with this Spurs in Oklahoma City. It's the first time in a while I've been intrigued by the NBA. I am all about this, man. Wemby's got my attention.
Well, especially playing those guys. I agree with you on that. And since the Baltimore Orioles are an absolute disgrace to Western civilization, and they're not playing tonight because they already blew a 3-1 lead earlier today, if my wife will indulge, I might pop a little bit of that on, although she might want to watch like
I could have got this started right off the bat and say, am I out of kilter here? And not saying he's the best player, but if I said that Wemby may be the best prospect ever, am I reaching?
So elaborate, because some people are going to.
If you look at 7-4 on the perimeter to do what he can do, 42 and 24. He's 22 years old. He's 7-4 on the perimeter, on ball. And then if he gets to the rim, all you got to do is throw it up. He's going to be 3 feet above everybody else. And
So-
man, he made tough shots down the stretch. Oklahoma City just swarmed him, man, and they were playing physical and beating on him. And then he made tough shots down the stretch. I am fascinated.
Weren't they considered the team to beat like 3 weeks ago, Oklahoma City?
Mm-hmm. Still are, I think. Still are probably, but.
Yeah, and when you say prospect, he was only 22, so he's got a long time.
Man, you think about
he's 19 years younger than LeBron.
He could get hurt. Look, you compare Michael Jordan's the greatest one of all time, so I'm definitely not going to go there. But I mean, man, you look 7'4" and doing all that. My God.
Yeah. That might be enough to keep me tuned in, because I choose the Orioles during this. I mean, if I have choice one or the other, I'm going to watch. It's the one team I root for in sports. So,
and Me TV took off Hogan's Heroes at 10 o'clock, and now they're showing the Golden Girls. So I don't,
you can't do that, man. You can't you can't do the Golden Girls. That rock star status will be stripped away from you immediately.
Yeah.
Do you want to know what my wife and I binged on for 11 episodes in our Airbnb at Jacksonville Beach one day when it was raining outside? Leave It to Beaver. We had a drinking game back in high school. Should I say that? We were allowed to back then, sort of. Every time Wally would say, "Hey, Beav," you had to chug a beer. 11 straight episodes. I'm glad I didn't have that game with my wife. I'm glad I didn't play that game with my wife.
My grandson's 17 months old. So it's Disney parades on YouTube. We keep him 3 days a week at night. His mom, my daughter, she's a physical therapist, and she works as a young mom. She works 3 days a week. So my wife and my mother-in-law have him. It's Disney parades. That's all it is, all day long, all night long.
I'm writing a children's book series that started when my daughter was 4. She couldn't get her to fall asleep, so I created this character out of her that was sort of had superhero powers, and created all these other characters. And each night, and I just made up the story one night. And she's like, "Oh, tell me another one, Daddy." I told her a second one, and she's out like a light. And I'm like, "I think I found the tonic." And the next night did the same thing. The next night did the same thing. And my wife used to be a neonatal nurse. She worked overnight at Wake Med. And I went downstairs and I sent her a couple of texts about, "Hey, here's the story I just told Elliot. It freaking worked. We finally got the kid falling asleep within 45 minutes. And soon enough, she wanted more stories. She wanted more characters, and I started writing them down. And then writing. As soon as she'd fall asleep, you have to sneak out of the kid's room, because one little sound wakes him up. You're back to square one for another 25 minutes to get him to fall asleep. And I would run downstairs and write up all the stories. And we had these a long time ago, and I've worked on them intermittently. And right now, I have a little bit of time because my other book is at the publisher right now. So my daughter and I, and even my wife's been helping. We've been working on it the last few days, and it's wild. It's wild stuff. Researching what little kids like and what they're interested in. How if you find one little hook to keep them captivated, they will be captivated for a long time. So it's kind of neat. And read some of the stories to my daughter the other day, and she's 16 now. Okay, and she remembers them. She remembers them when I would read them to her, and she's laying in bed, and she wants another one. And so hopefully this does something, and I can at least say, hey, it's a proven concept because it worked with her. So hopefully it'll work with other parents with kids. But
sounds to me like you got movie rights on the way.
I would love to have that, because then I could give you a raise. I'll join you in Memphis. Anyway, I'm that's kind of a fun thing I'm doing now, and it's really rekindling some of the past. Because that's the greatest. I know I got all mushy here, but anybody who's a young parent, you got young kids, man, embrace it, because this is the incredible connection time. If you have that, where you could tell them stories and just create things out of thin air and connect with them that way, it's an amazing, amazing thing, because we have characters that we made up that if I bring up the character's name, she'll still laugh today, and she's 16 years old. So it's kind of cool.
Good stuff.
Anyway, I don't even know why I went there with that. We are now at 2 hours and 9 minutes, and Jacob's probably screaming at us to shut this thing down. So we're going to go ahead and shut this thing down now. He's David. I'm AJ. Guys, we appreciate big time y'all hanging out. I wish we could do this more often, but we don't want to tell you more stories about Leave It to Beaver and bedtime stories with my daughter. I think that would probably get about 9 people watching, and it would be by accident. People that would like click in their phone, like the butt call on the phone. It would be like 9 people connected to the live stream through their phone in their pocket and not even know it. Remember, guys, 1 year, 50% off subscription, Taro 24/7. Or if you haven't been on there, you can try it for $1. 30 days, $1. That offer stands until the end of May. Once May ends, we will not have an offer like that for a long, 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 long time. David, go enjoy Aiden Diggs. I'm going to enjoy getting yelled at by Jacob because we went way, way too long. And then hopefully have a little bit of family time tonight and rekindle the flame with some old bedtime stories. Now I need to tell them to myself to fall asleep. So, all right, buddy. Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for watching,
Appreciate
guys.
it.
Thanks for watching.